The rejection letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, stamped with the official seal of the United States Army Marksmanship Unit. Sarah Elizabeth Crawford held the crisp white paper in her trembling hands, reading the same 3 devastating sentences over and over until the words blurred together through tears she refused to let fall. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Application denied. Candidate does not meet minimum physical requirements for advanced sniper training. Recommendation: consider alternative military occupational specialties more suited to applicant's profile. 22 years old, standing. Barely 5 feet 2 inches tall, weighing 108 pounds soaking wet, Sarah had known this moment would come. Every advisor, every recruiter, every well-meaning family member had prepared her for exactly this outcome. The United States Army Sniper School didn't accept people who looked like grocery store clerks from small Montana towns. They wanted soldiers who embodied physical intimidation, men and women whose very presence commanded respect and instilled fear in enemy combatants. Sarah Elizabeth Crawford looked like she belonged behind a library circulation desk, not behind the scope of a precision rifle system designed to eliminate threats at distances most people couldn't even see clearly. Her auburn hair, always pulled back in a practical ponytail, framed a face that belonged in a college textbook illustration of friendly neighborhood tutor rather than elite military marksman. Wire-rimmed reading glasses perched on her nose gave her the appearance of someone who spent more time with calculus equations than ballistic calculations. But appearances, as Sarah had learned throughout her 22 years of consistently surprising people, often concealed depths that surface observations couldn't detect. The Crawford family ranch stretched across 1,400 acres of pristine Montana wilderness, where Sarah had spent every summer since age 7 learning lessons that couldn't be taught in any classroom or military training facility. Her grandfather, Thomas Crawford, had purchased the land in 1967 after completing 3 tours of duty in Vietnam as a reconnaissance specialist whose official records remained classified to this day. The old man never spoke about his military service, never displayed medals or commendations, never shared war stories during family gatherings around the fireplace during harsh Montana winters. What Thomas Crawford did share was knowledge. Practical, methodical, life-preserving knowledge that he passed down to his granddaughter through patient instruction that began with basic safety principles and gradually evolved into advanced techniques that most people would never need to learn. Sarah's earliest memories involved walking beside her grandfather through dense forest terrain, learning to move without disturbing the natural environment, to observe without being observed, to understand the subtle language of wind patterns and atmospheric conditions that determined whether a shot would find its intended target or miss by crucial inches. Thomas never called these lessons training or instruction. He simply referred to them as spending time together, as if teaching a 7-year-old girl to calculate distance, using nothing more than visual reference points, was the most natural grandfather-granddaughter activity imaginable. By age 10, Sarah could estimate ranges to any visible object within 5% accuracy using only her naked eye. By 12, she understood wind drift calculations that stumped college-educated engineers. By 15, she could field strip and reassemble any rifle manufactured in the past 50 years while blindfolded, her fingers moving with the unconscious precision of someone who had performed these tasks thousands of times under her grandfather's patient supervision. But the most important lesson Thomas Crawford taught his granddaughter had nothing to do with marksmanship or technical proficiency. The most crucial knowledge he imparted concerned the difference between taking a life and saving one, between using deadly force for conquest and using it for protection. Every shot, he would remind Sarah during their countless hours together, on the ranch carried moral weight that extended far beyond the physical impact of metal meeting flesh. Power without wisdom is destruction, Thomas would say while Sarah practiced breathing techniques that would later prove invaluable under combat stress. Skill without purpose is just showing off. But capability combined with the right reasons can change the course of history, one decision at a time. Sarah absorbed these lessons with the quiet intensity that characterized everything she approached. In life, school assignments, part-time jobs, relationships with friends and family members, she brought the same methodical thoroughness to every responsibility, every challenge, every opportunity for growth and improvement. Teachers consistently praised her academic performance, while noting that she seemed older than her years, more serious than typical teenagers, as if she carried knowledge and responsibilities that her peers couldn't quite comprehend. During her senior year of high school, Sarah's guidance counselor suggested she consider applying for academic scholarships to prestigious universities where her mathematical aptitude and scientific curiosity would find appropriate expression. Engineering programs, physics departments, computer science curricula, opportunities that would utilize her analytical mind while providing stable career prospects in civilian industries. Sarah listened politely to these recommendations, thanked the counselor for her thoughtful suggestions, and then quietly submitted applications to military recruitment programs that specialized in advanced marksmanship training. She never explained her decision to family members who expected her to pursue traditional college education. She never justified her career choice to friends who assumed she would follow conventional paths toward conventional success. The truth was that Sarah Elizabeth Crawford had known her calling since age 7, when her grandfather first placed a rifle in her small hands and taught her that some responsibilities couldn't be delegated to other people. Some situations required individuals who possessed both the technical capability and moral clarity to make life and death decisions under impossible pressure. Some problems could only be solved by people willing to accept consequences that others couldn't bear. Military recruitment testing revealed what Thomas Crawford had known for 15 years but never spoken aloud. Sarah's natural aptitude for precision shooting exceeded anything the standardized evaluation systems were designed to measure. Her scores broke records that had stood for decades. Her technical knowledge surpassed that of candidates with formal military education. Her psychological profiles indicated the kind of mental stability and emotional maturity that military psychologists considered ideal for high-stress combat specialties. But none of these exceptional qualifications appeared on the application forms that determined acceptance into elite training programs. Military bureaucracy operated according to metrics that emphasized physical specifications, prior military experience, and educational credentials from institutions that the selection committees recognized and respected. A 22-year-old woman from rural Montana, regardless of her test scores or natural abilities, simply didn't fit the profile that advanced sniper training was designed to accommodate. The rejection letter represented the collision between Sarah's exceptional capabilities and the military's standardized expectations. On paper, she appeared to be exactly the kind of candidate who would waste valuable training resources, occupy a slot that should go to someone with better prospects for successful completion, and ultimately fail to meet the demanding standards that separated elite marksmen from ordinary soldiers. What the selection committee couldn't know, what their application process couldn't detect, was that Sarah Elizabeth Crawford had been preparing for advanced sniper training her entire life, under the guidance of someone whose own military service had involved the kind of classified operations that created legends among special forces communities. They couldn't know that she had already mastered techniques that wouldn't be taught until the final weeks of their program. They couldn't know that her apparent physical limitations concealed advantages that larger, stronger candidates would never possess. Most importantly, they couldn't know that rejecting Sarah Crawford's application would prove to be one of the most significant mistakes in the history of American military training. A decision that would ultimately force them to reconsider everything they thought they understood about identifying and developing exceptional talent. The morning after receiving her rejection letter, Sarah drove to the most remote section of her grandfather's ranch, where Thomas had constructed a private shooting range that exceeded military specifications for precision training. Targets positioned at distances from 300 to 1,500 yards. Wind flags placed at strategic intervals to provide real-time atmospheric data. Elevation changes that simulated the challenging conditions that snipers encountered. In combat environments, Sarah spent 6 hours on that range, firing round after round with the methodical precision that her grandfather had instilled in her since childhood. Each shot struck its intended target with mechanical consistency. Each group of 5 rounds clustered within margins of error that professional military instructors would have considered impossible for someone without formal training. But Sarah wasn't shooting to prove anything to herself or to demonstrate her capabilities for absent observers. She was shooting because precision marksmanship had always been her method of processing complex emotions, of working through problems that couldn't be solved through conventional analysis. The rhythm of breathing, the mathematics of ballistic calculation, the moment of absolute stillness before the trigger broke, these elements combined to create a meditative state where Sarah could think clearly about decisions that would determine the direction of her entire life. By sunset, Sarah Elizabeth Crawford had made a choice that would surprise everyone who thought they knew her, including family members who assumed she would accept the military's decision and pursue alternative career paths. She would not appeal the rejection. She would not seek assistance from influential contacts who might help her gain reconsideration. She would not modify her appearance or her approach to better fit conventional expectations. Instead, Sarah would demonstrate her capabilities in ways that standardized application processes couldn't ignore, through actions that would force the military establishment to recognize exceptional talent regardless of its unexpected packaging. She would prove that their selection criteria had overlooked someone whose contributions could exceed anything they had ever seen from traditionally qualified candidates. The plan that Sarah developed during those 6 hours of methodical shooting would require patience, precision, and the kind of calculated risk-taking that separated successful special operations from failed attempts. It would require her to operate outside official channels while maintaining the ethical standards that her grandfather had emphasized throughout her training. Most challenging of all, it would require her to demonstrate her value to people who had already decided she possessed none. But Sarah Elizabeth Crawford had been preparing for exactly this kind of challenge her entire life. Trained by someone who understood that the most important battles were often fought by people whom others had underestimated. The rejection letter that should have ended her military aspirations would instead become the catalyst for a demonstration of skill and determination that would reshape how the United States Army identified and developed its most valuable human resources. 3 weeks after the rejection letter arrived, Sarah discovered that the United States military operated 2 distinct systems for identifying exceptional talent. The official system involved standardized applications, committee reviews, and bureaucratic protocols that emphasized conventional qualifications and predictable career trajectories. The unofficial system consisted of networks, relationships, and word-of-mouth recommendations that connected people who recognized capability regardless of its packaging. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Detective Marcus Williams of the Billings Police Department had served 12 years as a Marine Corps Scout sniper before transitioning to civilian law enforcement. His reputation for resolving hostage situations and neutralizing armed suspects had earned him respect throughout Montana's law enforcement community, but very few people knew that his exceptional marksmanship skills had been honed during classified operations in places that didn't appear on any official deployment records. Williams first encountered Sarah Crawford during a multi-agency training exercise at the State Police Academy, where local law enforcement officers practiced advanced tactical scenarios alongside National Guard units preparing for overseas deployment. The exercise involved precision shooting competitions designed to evaluate different agencies' capabilities under simulated combat stress, with participants engaging targets at various distances using equipment provided by the training facility. Sarah had volunteered to assist with range safety operations, checking equipment, recording scores, and ensuring that all safety protocols were followed throughout the day-long competition. Her role was purely administrative, requiring no special qualifications. Beyond basic firearms knowledge and attention to detail, she moved quietly between firing positions, observing techniques, noting equipment preferences, and maintaining the detailed documentation that bureaucratic oversight required. But Williams noticed something unusual about the young woman who seemed content to remain invisible among the competing marksmen. Her observations were too precise, her technical commentary too sophisticated, her understanding of ballistic principles too advanced for someone whose official role involved nothing more than keeping accurate records. When seasoned law enforcement officers discussed wind compensation techniques, Sarah would nod knowingly rather than listening with the blank expression of someone learning new concepts. When National Guard instructors explained advanced shooting positions, she would unconsciously adjust her own posture as if muscle memory was correcting theoretical demonstrations. During the afternoon break, Williams approached Sarah with casual curiosity that concealed deeper professional interest. He had spent enough years evaluating potential team members to recognize when someone possessed capabilities that their official position didn't reflect, and everything about Sarah Crawford suggested hidden depths that warranted further investigation. "You seem pretty familiar with precision shooting principles," Williams observed, initiating a conversation that would ultimately change the trajectory of Sarah's entire career. "Have you done much competitive shooting yourself?" Sarah's response was characteristically modest, deflecting attention while providing just enough information to satisfy polite curiosity. "I grew up on a ranch where hunting was necessary for practical reasons. My grandfather taught me basic marksmanship when I was young." But Williams had interrogated enough suspects and interviewed enough witnesses to recognize when someone was carefully managing the information they revealed. Sarah's explanation was technically accurate while omitting crucial details that would paint a completely different picture of her background and capabilities. Her word choices, her body language, her obvious comfort with technical terminology. Everything suggested that basic marksmanship was a significant understatement. "What kind of distances were you shooting at on the ranch?" Williams asked, his tone remaining conversational while his trained instincts evaluated every aspect of Sarah's response. "Whatever the situation required," Sarah replied, and Williams immediately understood that he was speaking with someone who had been taught to answer questions without revealing information that might compromise operational security. Her phrasing was identical to responses he had heard from special operations personnel during debriefings. Individuals who had been trained to provide truthful answers that disclosed nothing sensitive. That evening, Williams made several phone calls to contacts within military and law enforcement communities, describing his encounter with Sarah Crawford and asking whether anyone had encountered similar situations where exceptional talent remained hidden beneath unremarkable official credentials. The responses he received were more intriguing than he had anticipated, suggesting that the informal networks that connected elite marksmen had been discussing a young woman from Montana whose test scores had created considerable behind-the-scenes interest. Colonel Patricia Hayes commanded the Army Marksmanship Unit's Advanced Training Division, overseeing programs that developed the military's most skilled precision shooters. Her responsibilities included evaluating applications, designing curricula, and maintaining standards that ensured only the most qualified candidates received specialized training that cost taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars per graduate. Hayes had personally reviewed Sarah Crawford's application and had been the deciding vote in the committee's unanimous decision to deny admission. The applicant's physical specifications, educational background, and lack of prior military experience created a profile that statistical analysis indicated would result in training failure and wasted resources. Hayes had signed the rejection letter without hesitation, confident that her decision protected program integrity while preserving training slots for candidates with better prospects for successful completion. But Hayes had also noticed something troubling about Sarah Crawford's application that she hadn't shared with other committee members. The young woman's test scores were not just exceptional, they were unprecedented. Her written examinations had achieved perfect marks across every category, including advanced ballistics calculations that typically challenged candidates with engineering degrees. Her psychological evaluations indicated mental stability and stress tolerance that surpassed profiles of successful special operations veterans. Her physical fitness assessments, while not impressive in absolute terms, revealed coordination and fine motor control that suggested natural aptitude for precision tasks. Hayes had spent 15 years evaluating military personnel, and she had never encountered a candidate whose objective qualifications were so dramatically superior to their subjective profile. Sarah Crawford's application represented a statistical anomaly that defied conventional understanding of how exceptional marksmanship ability developed and manifested itself in potential training candidates. When Detective Williams contacted Hayes through official channels, requesting information about training opportunities for a law enforcement officer who had demonstrated unusual capabilities, Hayes initially assumed she was dealing with routine interagency cooperation. Local police departments frequently sought advanced training for officers who showed promise in tactical specialties, and the military often provided such assistance when resources permitted and mutual benefits could be achieved. But Williams's description of his encounter with Sarah Crawford immediately captured Hayes's attention in ways that routine training requests never did. The young woman Williams described matched the profile that had been troubling Hayes for weeks, and his account of her behavior during the multi-agency exercise confirmed suspicions that the selection committee had overlooked someone whose capabilities exceeded anything their evaluation systems were designed to measure. Can you arrange for this individual to demonstrate her claimed abilities under controlled conditions? Hayes asked Williams, her professional interest overriding the bureaucratic protocols that typically govern such requests. I would like to observe these capabilities personally before making any recommendations about appropriate training opportunities. Williams understood that Hayes was offering something extraordinary, the chance for Sarah to prove her abilities to someone with authority to override previous decisions and open doors that standard application processes had closed. But he also recognized that this opportunity would require Sarah to reveal capabilities that she had obviously been concealing for reasons that remained unclear. The meeting took place on a Saturday morning at a private shooting facility outside Helena, Montana, where civilian contractors tested equipment for military and law enforcement agencies. The location provided controlled conditions that would allow accurate evaluation while maintaining the discretion that all parties considered essential. Hayes arrived with 2 technical specialists whose expertise would ensure that any demonstration met rigorous scientific standards that could withstand official scrutiny. Sarah appeared at the designated time with equipment that immediately impressed the military observers. Her rifle was a civilian model that had been extensively modified with components that exceeded military specifications for precision and reliability. Her ammunition was hand-loaded to tolerances that suggested access to manufacturing equipment and technical knowledge that most professional marksmen never acquired. Her shooting accessories, bipods, scopes, range-finding equipment, represented thousands of dollars of investment in tools that only serious competitive shooters typically possessed. But the most striking aspect of Sarah's preparation was her complete lack of nervousness or uncertainty. She approached the demonstration with calm professionalism that suggested extensive experience with high-stakes evaluations, moving through equipment checks and range preparation with efficiency that impressed observers who had witnessed similar demonstrations by candidates with decades of military training. Hayes had designed a series of challenges that would evaluate not just marksmanship, accuracy, but also the kind of rapid problem-solving and stress management that combat situations demanded. Targets at multiple distances, time constraints that simulated tactical urgency, environmental conditions that tested adaptability and technique refinement. The course of fire was designed to identify weaknesses and limitations that could predict training difficulties or operational failures. What happened next would fundamentally alter Hayes's understanding of human potential and force, heard her reconsider everything she thought she knew about identifying exceptional talent. Sarah Crawford didn't just pass the evaluation, she redefined what achievement looked like when natural ability combined with proper training and absolute dedication to excellence. Her performance that morning would generate classified reports that reached the highest levels of military command, initiating discussions about training methodologies, selection criteria, and the possibility that America's most valuable human resources were being overlooked by systems designed to identify conventional excellence rather than extraordinary capability hidden beneath unremarkable appearances. The Helena shooting facility stretched across 40 acres of carefully maintained terrain that replicated the challenging conditions elite marksmen encountered in operational environments. Steel targets positioned at distances ranging from 200 to 1,200 yards tested different aspects of precision shooting, while environmental factors, elevation changes, natural wind patterns, varying light conditions created the kind of unpredictable challenges that separated exceptional shooters from merely competent ones. Colonel Hayes established observation positions that provided clear sight lines to all target areas while maintaining sufficient distance to avoid influencing Sarah's performance through psychological pressure. Her technical specialists, Sergeant Major Rodriguez and Chief Warrant Officer Thompson, deployed measurement equipment that would document every aspect of the demonstration with scientific precision that could withstand the most rigorous official scrutiny. Sarah began her preparation with methodical attention to detail that impressed military observers accustomed to working with personnel whose training emphasized speed and efficiency over thoroughness. She spent 20 minutes examining each piece of equipment, checking mechanical tolerances, verifying optical alignment, and confirming ammunition consistency with precision that suggested obsessive dedication to eliminating variables that could affect performance. But her most striking preparation ritual involved something that none of the observers had anticipated. Sarah removed a small leather journal from her equipment case and spent several minutes reviewing handwritten notes that covered ballistic data, environmental factors, and technical observations accumulated over years of systematic practice. The journal's pages contained mathematical calculations, wind measurement tables, and atmospheric pressure charts that revealed the depth of her theoretical knowledge and practical experience. Range conditions today differ from my normal practice environment, Sarah explained to Hayes while consulting her notes. Altitude is 800 feet higher than my home range, which affects trajectory by approximately 1.3 inches at 800 yards. Barometric pressure is 2 points lower than standard conditions, requiring compensation of roughly half an inch at maximum distance. Wind patterns here are more complex due to terrain features that create unpredictable air currents. Hayes exchanged glances with her technical specialists, recognizing that Sarah's preliminary analysis demonstrated an understanding of advanced ballistic principles that many professional military marksmen never fully grasped. Her ability to quantify environmental factors and predict their effects on projectile flight suggested training that extended far beyond basic marksmanship instruction. The first phase of Hayes's evaluation involved precision shooting at known distances under controlled conditions. 5 targets positioned at ranges from 300 to 700 yards, with specific scoring zones that required sub-minute of angle accuracy to achieve passing marks. Standard military evaluation protocols allowed multiple attempts at each target, recognizing that even skilled marksmen occasionally experienced equipment malfunctions or momentary lapses in concentration. Sarah approached the firing line with unhurried confidence that contrasted sharply with the nervous energy that typically characterized candidates undergoing high-stakes evaluations. Her shooting position demonstrated textbook technique refined through countless hours of practice, with body alignment, breathing rhythm, and equipment positioning that maximized stability and minimized variables that could affect shot placement. First shot struck the 300-yard target precisely in the center scoring ring, producing an impact that would have satisfied military training standards. But Sarah's expression suggested dissatisfaction with performance that observers considered excellent, as if she was measuring herself against standards that exceeded official requirements. Her second shot, aimed at the 400-yard target, struck within millimeters of her point of aim. The third shot, at 500 yards, created an impact hole so close to the perfect center that measurement equipment was required to determine the exact location. By the time Sarah engaged the 700-yard target, Hayes and her specialists were witnessing a shooting performance that challenged their understanding of what human beings could achieve with conventional equipment under field conditions. But the most remarkable aspect of Sarah's demonstration wasn't the accuracy of individual shots. It was the mechanical consistency with which she delivered precision under gradually increasing pressure. Each target engagement followed identical preparation rituals, identical timing sequences, identical follow-through procedures that suggested training that had automated every aspect of the shooting process until conscious thought was no longer required. "Miss Crawford," Hayes called out during a brief pause between target sequences, "where exactly did you receive training in advanced marksmanship techniques?" Sarah's response provided information while maintaining the careful discretion that had characterized all her interactions with military personnel. "My grandfather served in the military during the Vietnam era. He believed that certain skills should be preserved and passed down through family generations, regardless of whether they were immediately necessary for civilian life." Hayes understood that she was receiving a sanitized version of Sarah's background, but the implications were clear enough. Sarah had been trained by someone with military experience who possessed knowledge and techniques that weren't available through conventional civilian instruction. Her capabilities reflected years of systematic development under guidance from someone who understood the difference between recreational shooting and combat applicable marksmanship. The second phase of Hayes's evaluation involved unknown distance targets that required Sarah to estimate ranges, calculate environmental factors, and engage objectives without benefit of precise measurement or pre-calculated data. These scenarios replicated combat conditions where marksmen faced situations that couldn't be anticipated or prepared for through standard training exercises. Hayes positioned targets at distances that she kept confidential, requiring Sarah to determine ranges using only visual estimation and environmental analysis. Steel silhouettes were placed among natural terrain features at locations that ranged from 600 to over 1,000 yards, with scoring systems that demanded first-round hits to achieve passing marks. Sarah spent 15 minutes studying the target area through binoculars, making notes in her journal while calculating factors that would influence projectile flight over extended distances. Her analysis included wind speed measurements taken at multiple elevations, atmospheric pressure readings, temperature variations that affected air density, and geometric calculations that accounted for the shooting angle's effect on bullet trajectory. Target Alpha appears to be positioned at approximately 740 yards. Sarah announced to the observers, providing range estimates that demonstrated confidence in her analytical abilities. Wind conditions show consistent 8 miles per hour. Crosswind from the northwest, with thermal updrafts near the target location that will affect bullet path during the final 100 yards of flight. Rodriguez checked Sarah's estimate against laser range-finding equipment that provided precise measurements unavailable to the shooter. Her visual range estimation was accurate within 5 yards, precision that typically required years of experience, and natural aptitude that couldn't be taught through conventional instruction. Sarah's first shot at the unknown distance target struck within the scoring zone that Hayes had designated for passing performance. But rather than celebrating success, Sarah immediately began analyzing factors that had influenced the shots. Impact location, making notes that would refine her calculations for subsequent engagements. Her second unknown distance shot improved on the first, striking closer to optimal placement despite engaging a target positioned at greater range under more challenging environmental conditions. Her third shot achieved what military observers had never witnessed during evaluation scenarios: perfect shot placement at an unknown distance exceeding 900 yards, with calculations performed entirely through visual analysis and mathematical estimation. Thompson, who had observed hundreds of military marksmanship evaluations during his 20-year career, later described Sarah's performance as statistically impossible according to everything we understand about human capabilities. Under evaluation stress, her ability to deliver precision under unknown conditions suggested training and natural aptitude that exceeded anything documented in official military records. But Hayes had designed one final challenge that would test capabilities beyond mere shooting accuracy. Combat situations required marksmen to perform under time pressure, psychological stress, and equipment limitations that often prevented optimal performance. The most valuable military marksmen were those who maintained effectiveness when conditions degraded and conventional techniques failed. Hayes presented Sarah with a scenario that combined multiple stress factors simultaneously: unknown distance targets that required rapid engagement, equipment deliberately configured to introduce mechanical variables, and time constraints that prevented thorough analysis and preparation. The challenge was designed to identify breaking points where performance collapsed under accumulated pressure. Sarah listened to the scenario description with obvious interest rather than apprehension, as if Hayes was presenting an engaging puzzle rather than a demanding test of capabilities. Under adverse conditions, her questions focused on clarifying rules and parameters rather than expressing concerns about difficulty or potential failure. "Ma'am, are there restrictions on shooting positions, or may I adapt techniques based on terrain and equipment limitations?" Sarah asked, demonstrating tactical thinking that considered how to maximize effectiveness within given constraints. Hayes authorized flexibility in technique, curious to observe how Sarah would modify her approach when optimal conditions weren't available. Military training emphasized adaptability and improvisation, but few candidates demonstrated creative problem-solving under evaluation pressure. What followed was a demonstration of fieldcraft and marksmanship integration that fundamentally altered Hayes's understanding of how exceptional individuals developed and applied advanced skills under challenging conditions. Sarah's performance that afternoon would generate classified reports that reached Pentagon leadership and initiate discussions about training methodologies that had never been officially considered. The final challenge Hayes' design pushed beyond CONVENTIONAL marksmanship evaluation into territory that tested combat decision-making under extreme pressure. Multiple targets appeared and disappeared at irregular intervals, requiring Sarah to prioritize threats, calculate solutions rapidly, and deliver accurate fire while processing tactical information that changed continuously throughout the engagement. Sarah studied the scenario parameters with intense concentration, her analytical mind working through possibilities and complications that less experienced shooters might not anticipate. The challenge involved 7 targets positioned at various distances, but only 4 would be visible at any given time. Target exposure duration varied randomly between 8 and 15 seconds, requiring split-second decisions about engagement priority and technical execution. This scenario replicates conditions our advanced graduates encounter during high-value target interdiction missions. Hayes explained, providing context that emphasized the real-world application of the skills being evaluated. Success requires not just shooting accuracy, but tactical judgment that determines which targets represent immediate threats versus secondary objectives. Sarah nodded understanding while making final adjustments to her equipment configuration. Her rifle scope settings, ammunition selection, and shooting position had been optimized for the specific challenges the scenario presented. But more importantly, her mental preparation involved visualization exercises that her grandfather had taught her years. EARLIE, techniques for processing complex, tactical information while maintaining the calm focus that precision shooting demanded. The scenario commenced with electronic signals that activated target mechanisms positioned throughout the range complex. Sarah immediately identified 3 exposed targets at distances of approximately 500, 700, and 900 yards. Her tactical analysis required determining which target represented the highest priority based on simulated threat assessment criteria that Hayes had provided. Sarah engaged the nearest target first, delivering a center mass hit that would have neutralized the simulated threat instantly. Her bolt manipulation and target transition occurred with fluid efficiency that impressed military observers, accustomed to working with personnel whose training emphasized speed and precision under pressure. Within 12 seconds of scenario initiation, Sarah had successfully engaged her first objective and was acquiring her second target, but the scenario's complexity increased dramatically as additional targets appeared while others disappeared, according to computerized timing sequences that prevented predictable engagement patterns. Sarah found herself tracking multiple objectives simultaneously, calculating ballistic solutions for different ranges and environmental conditions, while maintaining situational awareness that allowed rapid adaptation to changing tactical circumstances. Her second shot struck a 700-yard target that had been visible for only 11 seconds, before disappearing behind concealment. The hit occurred during the final 2 seconds of exposure time, demonstrating reaction speed and shooting precision that challenged everything Hayes understood about human performance capabilities under time pressure. Rodriguez monitored Sarah's performance through high-powered optics that provided detailed observation of her technique and equipment manipulation. Her breathing control remained steady despite tactical stress that typically disrupted even experienced marksmen. Her trigger control maintained consistency across different target distances and engagement timeframes. Most remarkably, her target acquisition speed actually improved as scenario complexity increased, as if tactical pressure enhanced rather than degraded her capabilities. "She's processing information faster than our timing systems can present new challenges," Rodriguez reported to Hayes through secure communications equipment. Her engagement sequence demonstrates tactical thinking that prioritizes threats according to distance, exposure duration, and potential impact, decision-making that we typically see only from graduates with combat experience. Thompson documented technical aspects of Sarah's performance using measurement equipment that recorded precise data about shot placement, timing intervals, and equipment manipulation efficiency. His instruments revealed shooting accuracy that exceeded military standards for precision marksmanship, but more significantly, They documented consistency that remained constant despite increasing scenario complexity and time pressure. Sarah's third and fourth shots occurred within a 20-second window that required her to engage targets at dramatically different distances while accounting for wind conditions that varied across the range complex. Her mathematical calculations had to account for different ballistic trajectories, environmental factors that affected each target location differently, and timing constraints that prevented careful analysis and deliberate shot preparation. Both shots achieved scoring hits that would have satisfied advanced military training requirements. But Sarah's performance transcended mere technical proficiency. Her tactical decision-making demonstrated understanding of prioritization principles that took most military marksmen years to develop through combat experience and specialized training. Hayes observed the demonstration through equipment that provided detailed analysis of every aspect of Sarah's technique, from breathing patterns to equipment manipulation to target acquisition sequences. Her professional assessment recognized that she was witnessing capabilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about human potential and training effectiveness. "Miss Crawford," Hayes called out during a brief pause between scenario phases, "your performance today exceeds anything we've documented during similar evaluations. Where did you develop tactical decision-making skills that typically require combat experience to acquire?" Sarah's response provided insight into training methodologies that conventional military instruction rarely encountered. "My grandfather emphasized that marksmanship without tactical understanding was simply target shooting. He taught me to consider every shot within a larger strategic context, to understand that precision shooting serves purposes beyond demonstrating technical proficiency." The implication was clear to Hayes and her specialists. Sarah had received instruction that integrated technical skills with tactical applications from someone whose military background included advanced training in combat marksmanship. Her capabilities reflected years of development under guidance that emphasized real-world application rather than academic demonstration. But Hayes had reserved the most challenging aspect of her evaluation for the scenario's final phase. Combat conditions often required marksmen to perform when equipment failed, when environmental factors degraded optimal shooting conditions, and when tactical circumstances prevented ideal technique execution. The most valuable military marksmen were those who maintained effectiveness when standard procedures couldn't be applied. Hayes introduced equipment malfunctions and environmental complications that forced Sarah to adapt her techniques in real time, while maintaining engagement effectiveness against targets that continued appearing according to computerized timing sequences. A scope that developed tracking problems, ammunition that varied in performance characteristics, wind conditions that changed rapidly across different range sectors, complications that tested adaptability and problem-solving under pressure. Sarah responded to these challenges with creative solutions that demonstrated understanding of fundamental principles rather than mere memorization of standard procedures. When her scope developed mechanical issues, she switched to backup iron sights and continued engaging targets with accuracy that barely diminished. When ammunition performance became inconsistent, she adjusted her hold-off calculations based on observed impact patterns and maintained scoring hits across multiple target distances. Most impressively, when wind conditions became unpredictable due to artificial fans that Hayes activated to simulate thermal effects, Sarah began using environmental indicators that most marksmen never learned to interpret. Vegetation movement at different elevations, dust patterns that revealed air current directions, even subtle changes in mirage effects that indicated atmospheric variations. Observational skills that allowed her to maintain shooting precision despite environmental challenges that would have degraded most marksmen's performance significantly. Thompson's measurement equipment documented performance consistency that remained virtually unchanged despite accumulated complications and stress factors. Sarah's shot placement accuracy, target engagement timing, and tactical decision-making maintained standards that exceeded what Hayes had observed from military personnel with years of advanced training and combat experience. Her adaptation to equipment failures and environmental degradation suggests training that emphasized principle understanding rather than procedure memorization, Thompson reported through secure communications. She's demonstrating problem-solving capabilities that typically develop only through extensive field experience under varied conditions. Rodriguez focused his observation on Sarah's stress management and psychological responses to accumulated pressure. Military training emphasized mental toughness and emotional control under adverse conditions, but Sarah displayed calm professionalism that seemed unaffected by challenges that typically produced visible stress responses in evaluation. Candidates: no indication of performance anxiety or confidence degradation, despite scenario complexity that exceeds our standard evaluation protocols, Rodriguez documented. Her psychological profile under stress suggests training that prepared her specifically for high-pressure performance rather than general marksmanship instruction. The scenario concluded after 45 minutes of continuous challenges that tested every aspect of advanced marksmanship capability under simulated combat conditions. Sarah had successfully engaged 14 targets across multiple distances and environmental conditions while adapting to equipment complications and tactical variables that replicated real-world operational challenges. Her overall performance achieved scoring results that exceeded every benchmark Hayes used for evaluating advanced military marksmen. But more significantly, her demonstration had revealed capabilities that conventional training systems weren't designed to develop or evaluate, suggesting that America's military establishment had overlooked someone whose potential contributions could reshape their understanding of human performance and training effectiveness. Hayes spent 20 minutes reviewing documented results with her technical specialists, analyzing data that would form the basis for reports that could influence military training methodologies and personnel selection criteria. Sarah's performance that afternoon represented more than exceptional individual achievement. It challenged fundamental assumptions about how elite capabilities developed and how military institutions identified their most valuable human resources. Secure telephone in Colonel Hayes's office rang at 0347 hours on a Tuesday morning in October, 3 weeks after Sarah Crawford's unprecedented demonstration at Helena. Hayes recognized the caller identification immediately. General Morrison, commander of Special Operations Command, whose direct communication typically indicated situations that required immediate attention and absolute discretion. Colonel Hayes, we have a developing crisis that requires your most qualified marksman available for immediate deployment. Morrison's voice carried the controlled urgency that characterized military leaders dealing with time-sensitive operations. Intelligence indicates a high-value target elimination opportunity in eastern Syria, but the operational window closes within 72 hours. Hayes consulted her personnel roster while Morrison continued briefing her on requirements that would challenge even her most experienced graduates. The mission involved precision shooting at extreme range under adverse environmental conditions, with tactical complications that demanded exceptional technical proficiency and psychological stability under life-or-death pressure. Sir, our most qualified sniper completed deployment rotation 2 weeks ago and remains on mandatory recovery leave, Hayes reported, reviewing availability status and personnel whose capabilities match the mission requirements. Second tier. Candidates lack experience with extreme range engagements under hostile conditions. Morrison's response indicated that conventional personnel assignments wouldn't address the tactical necessities this operation demanded. Intelligence reports described environmental and logistical factors that exceeded standard operational parameters, requiring capabilities that few military marksmen possessed even after completing advanced training programs. Colonel, this isn't a standard elimination mission, Morrison explained, providing classified details that emphasize the operation's strategic importance. Target location involves shooting across terrain features that create ballistic challenges we've never encountered. Environmental conditions include temperature variations, wind patterns, and atmospheric factors that will test limits of human capability and equipment performance. Hayes understood that Morrison was describing a scenario that demanded more than technical expertise. Success would require creative problem-solving, adaptive thinking, and precision shooting capability that existed at the absolute pinnacle of human potential. Her mind immediately focused on the young woman whose demonstration 3 weeks earlier had redefined her understanding of exceptional marksmanship. "Sir, I may have a candidate whose capabilities could address these requirements," Hayes said carefully, knowing that her recommendation would surprise Morrison and challenge conventional military personnel policies. However, this individual doesn't currently hold active military status or official sniper certification. Morrison's silence indicated that he was processing information that didn't align with normal operational procedures. Special Operations Command typically worked exclusively with personnel whose qualifications had been verified through established military training systems and whose security clearances permitted access to classified mission parameters. "Explain your recommendation, Colonel," Morrison finally responded, his tone suggesting willingness to consider unconventional solutions if they offered tactical advantages that conventional approaches couldn't provide. Hayes spent 15 minutes describing Sarah Crawford's background, demonstration performance, and capabilities that had been documented through rigorous evaluation by military specialists. Her report included technical data that supported claims about precision shooting ability that exceeded anything in official military records. But more importantly, it emphasized tactical judgment and psychological stability that suggested natural aptitude for high-stress operations. "Colonel Hayes, you're recommending civilian personnel for a classified special operations mission based on a single demonstration conducted outside official military oversight," Morrison summarized, highlighting procedural irregularities that would typically disqualify such recommendations. Immediately, Hayes recognized that her career was effectively balanced on her assessment of Sarah Crawford's abilities and her willingness to stake her professional reputation on capabilities that challenged conventional understanding of human potential and training effectiveness. "Sir, I'm recommending personnel whose documented capabilities exceed those of anyone currently available through conventional military channels," Hayes replied with conviction that reflected her certainty about Sarah's exceptional qualifications. "This individual's performance suggests training and natural aptitude that could make the difference between mission success and failure under the extreme conditions you've described." Morrison requested detailed files and evaluation documentation, but Hayes explained that much of Sarah's demonstration had been conducted through informal channels that hadn't generated official military records. The technical data existed, but bureaucratic documentation that supported normal personnel assignment procedures remained incomplete. "Colonel, I need someone operational within 48 hours, Morrison emphasized. "Can your recommended candidate deploy immediately with appropriate equipment and tactical support?" Hayes contacted Detective Williams, who served as her informal liaison with Sarah Crawford, requesting immediate communication about deployment availability and security clearance status. Williams's response indicated that Sarah maintained current federal background investigation clearances through her consulting work with law enforcement agencies, but her availability for immediate deployment remained uncertain. The telephone conversation that followed between Hayes and Sarah occurred through encrypted military communication systems that ensured operational security while allowing discussion of classified mission parameters. Sarah listened to Hayes's briefing with professional attention that suggested understanding of the strategic importance and tactical challenges involved. "Ma'am, What specific environmental factors make this mission more challenging than standard long-range elimination operations? Sarah asked, demonstrating tactical thinking that focused on problem-solving rather than personal risk assessment. Hayes described atmospheric conditions that included temperature gradients exceeding 40 degrees Fahrenheit between shooting position and target location, wind patterns that varied dramatically across different elevation zones, and terrain features that created ballistic complications requiring mathematical calculations beyond standard military training curricula. Additionally, the operational timeline prohibits extensive preparation and reconnaissance. Hayes continued. Target acquisition and elimination must occur within a narrow window that prevents thorough environmental analysis and equipment optimization. Sarah's response indicated acceptance of the mission, despite challenges that would have deterred most professional marksmen from attempting engagement under such adverse conditions. Her questions focused on equipment availability, ammunition specifications, and tactical support rather than expressing concerns about mission difficulty or personal safety. Colonel Hayes, I'll need access to specific rifle and optical systems that can maintain accuracy under the environmental extremes you've described, Sarah said, demonstrating technical knowledge that allowed her to identify equipment requirements based on tactical parameters. Standard military issue may not provide sufficient precision under these conditions. Hayes authorized access to experimental weapon systems and advanced optical equipment that exceeded standard military specifications, recognizing that conventional equipment limitations could compromise mission success even with exceptional operator capability. But the most significant obstacle to Sarah's immediate deployment involved bureaucratic procedures that typically required weeks of processing for civilian personnel to receive classified mission access and operational authority. Military regulations demanded security investigations, medical evaluations, and administrative documentation that couldn't be completed within Morrison's 48-hour timeline. Morrison resolved these procedural complications through executive authority that bypassed standard military bureaucracy, issuing emergency authorization that granted Sarah temporary commissioned officer status and security clearances necessary for immediate deployment. Her official designation became Special Operations Consultant with authority equivalent to Senior Military Marksmanship Specialists. Ms. Crawford, you now hold authority to requisition any equipment, personnel, or logistical support necessary for mission success, Morrison informed Sarah during their secure communication briefing. Your recommendations regarding tactical approach and operational methodology will be implemented without bureaucratic review or administrative delay. Sarah's response demonstrated understanding of the responsibility and trust that Morrison was placing in someone whose military credentials existed entirely outside conventional qualification systems. Her acceptance of the mission carried weight that reflected years of preparation for exactly this kind of challenge, even though she had never anticipated that her capabilities would be tested under such extraordinary circumstances. The deployment timeline required Sarah to travel from Montana to a classified staging area in less than 36 hours, where she would receive final briefings, equipment customization, and tactical coordination with special operations personnel who would provide mission support. Her transformation from rejected applicant to emergency special operations consultant represented the most dramatic personnel assignment in recent military history. Hayes spent the remaining preparation time coordinating logistical details that would ensure Sarah's mission success, while managing bureaucratic complications that emerged when conventional military systems encountered personnel assignments that didn't follow established procedures. Her professional reputation now depended entirely on Sarah Crawford's ability to deliver results that justified the extraordinary measures Morrison had authorized. The classified aircraft that transported Sarah to the operational staging area carried equipment modifications and ammunition, specifications that had been customized specifically for the environmental challenges she would face. Military technicians had worked continuously to optimize rifle systems, optical devices, and ballistic computers that would maximize her chances of success under conditions that had never been encountered in previous military operations. As Sarah prepared for deployment to one of the world's most dangerous operational environments, the military establishment was beginning to understand that their CONVENTIONL personnel selection and training systems had overlooked someone whose capabilities could reshape their approach to identifying and developing exceptional human resources. For the most demanding missions America's national security required. The staging area in Jordan operated under complete blackout protocols, with Sarah's arrival occurring during pre-dawn hours that concealed movement from satellite surveillance and ground-based observation. Captain Derek Jensen, mission commander for the tactical support team, briefed Sarah on intelligence parameters that revealed why conventional military marksmen had been deemed insufficient for this operation. Target designation is Hassan al-Rashid, weapons coordinator for the largest arms trafficking network operating between Syria and Iraq. Jensen explained while displaying reconnaissance photographs that showed a compound positioned in terrain that created unprecedented shooting challenges. Intelligence indicates he'll appear at a scheduled meeting tomorrow evening, providing a 6-minute window for elimination before he disappears into underground facilities where extraction becomes impossible. Sarah studied the tactical maps and satellite imagery with intense concentration, analyzing factors that would influence projectile flight over distances that pushed beyond documented limits of military precision shooting. The target location sat in a valley surrounded by rocky hills that created wind tunnels and thermal effects that would deflect bullets unpredictably during their flight path. What's the confirmed distance from optimal shooting positions to the target area? Sarah asked, immediately focusing on the technical challenges that would determine mission feasibility. Jensen's response indicated why this operation had required emergency authorization and unconventional personnel selection. Minimum engagement range is 1,400 yards due to terrain restrictions that prevent closer positioning. Maximum effective range, considering environmental factors, extends to nearly 1,600 yards, depending on final target location within the compound. Sarah had never attempted precision shooting at such extreme distances under combat conditions, but her theoretical knowledge and practical experience suggested that success remained possible with proper preparation and environmental analysis. Her grandfather's training had emphasized understanding ballistic principles rather than memorizing range tables, preparing her to solve shooting problems under conditions that exceeded standardized parameters. Captain Jensen, I'll need detailed meteorological data for the target area, including temperature variations at different elevations, prevailing wind patterns during the operational window, and atmospheric pressure predictions for tomorrow evening. Sarah requested, demonstrating systematic approach to problem solving that impressed military personnel accustomed to working with specialists who possessed advanced technical training. The intelligence briefing continued with classified information about al-Rashid's security protocols and movement patterns that would determine target acquisition timing and exposure duration. Sarah learned that her shot would need to be executed within a narrow window when the target appeared at a specific location, with backup security measures that would prevent second chances if the initial attempt failed. Miss Crawford, this individual's elimination represents strategic priority for counter-terrorism operations throughout the Middle East, Jensen emphasized, providing context about the mission's importance beyond tactical considerations. His weapons trafficking network supplies advanced military equipment to terrorist organizations operating in multiple countries, making his continued operation a direct threat to American personnel and allies. Sarah understood that mission success would save lives beyond the immediate tactical objective, creating strategic advantages that justified the extraordinary measures that had brought her to this operational theater. Her preparation that evening involved equipment customization and environmental analysis that would maximize her probability of success under conditions that had never been attempted and documented. Military operations. The rifle system provided for Sarah's use represented cutting-edge military technology specifically configured for extreme-range precision shooting. The weapon incorporated barrel modifications that improved accuracy at extended distances, optical systems that compensated for atmospheric distortion, and ballistic computers that calculated trajectory adjustments based on real-time environmental data. But even advanced equipment couldn't overcome the fundamental challenges that 14 to 1600-yard precision shooting presented under combat conditions. Success would depend on Sarah's ability to integrate technical knowledge, practical experience, and intuitive understanding of ballistic principles that her grandfather had developed through classified military operations decades earlier. Sarah spent 6 hours that night conducting equipment familiarization and test firing at known distances that allowed her to verify rifle performance and develop confidence in the weapon system's capabilities. Her practice sessions revealed that the rifle's accuracy potential exceeded standard military specifications, but also identified subtle performance characteristics that would influence shot placement calculations during the actual mission. Rifle demonstrates consistent accuracy, but bullet impact shifts approximately 2 inches left at ranges exceeding 1,200 yards due to barrel harmonics and twist rate, Sarah reported to Jensen after completing her evaluation. "I'll need to compensate for this systematic error when calculating shot placement tomorrow evening." Jensen coordinated with intelligence specialists who provided updated weather forecasting and target movement predictions based on surveillance data collected throughout the day. The information revealed that environmental conditions during the operational window would include variable winds, temperature gradients, and atmospheric pressure changes that would challenge even the most sophisticated ballistic calculations. The insertion to Sarah's shooting position occurred during late afternoon hours that provided sufficient daylight for terrain navigation while maintaining concealment from enemy observation. Her tactical support team included Staff Sergeant Martinez, who served as spotter and security coordinator, and Corporal Williams, who managed communications and extraction coordination. The shooting position they established offered optimal sight lines to the target compound while providing natural concealment among rocky outcroppings that had been selected through detailed terrain analysis. Sarah's field preparation involved range verification using laser measurement equipment and environmental monitoring using instruments that provided real-time atmospheric data. Confirmed range to primary target location is 1,523 yards, Martinez reported through secure communications equipment. Wind conditions show variable speeds between 8 and 14 miles per hour from the southwest, with thermal effects creating updrafts near the target area that will influence bullet trajectory during final flight phase. Sarah recorded these measurements in her field notebook while calculating ballistic solutions that accounted for multiple environmental variables simultaneously. Her mathematical analysis had to consider bullet drop over extreme distance, wind drift that varied across different sections of the flight path, and atmospheric effects that would influence projectile stability during the final 100 yards. Before impact, the complexity of these calculations exceeded anything covered in standard military training curricula, requiring understanding of advanced physics and mathematics that few marksmen ever developed even through years of specialized instruction. Sarah's ability to perform these computations mentally while managing pre-mission stress demonstrated training that had prepared her specifically for challenges that conventional military education never addressed. Target compound showing increased activity, Williams reported, as surveillance equipment detected movement patterns that suggested the scheduled meeting was proceeding according to intelligence predictions. multiple vehicles arriving on schedule, with security personnel positioning according to previously observed protocols. Sarah adjusted her shooting position for optimal stability while maintaining sight picture through her rifle scope that provided magnified observation of the target area. Her breathing control and muscular relaxation techniques followed procedures that her grandfather had taught her for managing physiological stress under combat conditions. The first challenge emerged when Sarah realized that atmospheric conditions were changing more rapidly than meteorological predictions had indicated. Temperature differentials between her shooting position and the target valley were creating thermal effects that would influence bullet flight in ways that couldn't be predicted through standard calculations. Martinez, I'm observing mirage patterns that indicate thermal updrafts stronger than our initial estimates, Sarah reported while studying environmental indicators through her rifle scope. Bullet trajectory will be affected by approximately 4 inches of vertical deviation due to air density variations along the flight path. Martinez confirmed Sarah's observations using specialized equipment that measured atmospheric conditions at the target location, validating her visual analysis of environmental factors that most marksmen wouldn't recognize or understand. Her ability to interpret subtle indicators and modify ballistic calculations accordingly demonstrated expertise that exceeded documented military training standards. At 1847 hours, Hassan al-Rashid appeared at the compound location that intelligence had identified as the optimal target area. Sarah acquired visual contact through her rifle scope, confirming target identification while calculating final adjustments for environmental conditions that had continued evolving throughout the afternoon. Positive target identification confirmed, Sarah announced through secure communications while settling into her final shooting position. Range 1,523 yards, wind variable from southwest at 12 miles per hour. Temperature differential creating 4-inch vertical compensation requirement. The shot that followed would be documented as the longest confirmed elimination in modern military history, achieved under environmental conditions that challenged every aspect of precision shooting technique and ballistic science. Sarah's preparation, training, and natural aptitude combined in a moment of absolute precision that justified every extraordinary measure taken to bring her to this operational theater. The impact occurred exactly where Sarah had calculated, eliminating al-Rashid instantly and creating strategic advantages that would influence counter-terrorism operations throughout the region for years afterward. Her success validated the military establishment's emergency decision to override conventional personnel policies and demonstrated capabilities that would reshape their understanding of human potential and training effectiveness. The Department of Defense inspection team arrived at Camp Riverside precisely at 1400 hours, their convoy of official vehicles creating clouds of desert dust as they approached the main gate. What they encountered was a military installation that had been fundamentally transformed by events that occurred just hours before their scheduled evaluation, though the inspectors had no way of knowing that routine security procedures had revealed truths that changed everything about how personnel interacted with each other. Brigadier General Susan Chun stepped out of the lead vehicle, her uniform immaculate despite the desert heat, and her bearing reflecting the kind of authority that came from decades of military service at the highest levels. As the senior inspector, she had evaluated dozens of installations across the country, looking for evidence of professional competence, operational readiness, and the intangible qualities that distinguished exceptional commands from merely adequate ones. The checkpoint processing for the inspection team proceeded with flawless efficiency, demonstrating the kind of professional courtesy and security consciousness that reflected well on Lieutenant Colonel Harrison's leadership and training programs. The military police personnel conducted their duties with respectful competence, asking appropriate questions while maintaining the dignity of all individuals being processed through security screening. What General Chun observed during her initial entry procedures was a level of professional interaction that exceeded her expectations for installations of this size and mission scope. The security personnel demonstrated genuine respect for all individuals, regardless of rank or status, conducting necessary procedures without the adversarial attitude that sometimes characterized military law enforcement operations. Staff Sergeant Davis was conspicuously absent from checkpoint duties, having been relieved of security responsibilities, pending the completion of formal disciplinary proceedings and mandatory retraining programs. Her replacement, Sergeant First Class Michael Thompson, conducted screening procedures with the kind of professional competence that reflected extensive experience and proper understanding of authorized protocols. The disciplinary meeting in Harrison's office had lasted 3 hours and resulted in consequences that would follow Davis throughout the remainder of her military career. Extra duty assignments extending for 12 weeks, mandatory training on proper treatment of classified personnel, and a formal letter of reprimand that would be permanently filed in her service record were just the administrative aspects of her punishment. More significantly, Davis would be attending specialized courses on military law, personnel interaction protocols, and the legal requirements for respecting security clearances that exceeded her access level. The training was scheduled to be conducted by instructors from higher headquarters, who specialized in educating personnel about the complex legal and ethical issues surrounding classified operations and personnel backgrounds. Captain Mitchell had delivered her intelligence briefing to the command staff with the same professional competence she displayed in all her assignments, providing strategic assessments that demonstrated expertise extending far beyond what appeared on her official personnel records. The senior officers who attended the classified briefing came away with enhanced respect for her analytical capabilities and operational understanding. The ripple effects of the checkpoint incident continued spreading through Camp Riverside in ways that influenced every aspect of base operations. Personnel who had witnessed the confrontation found themselves questioning their previous assumptions about the backgrounds and experiences of colleagues whose service records might not reflect their actual contributions to military operations. And national security. Master Sergeant Williams implemented comprehensive training programs that addressed not just the technical aspects of security screening but the underlying attitudes and assumptions that had contributed to the inappropriate treatment of Captain Mitchell. The new curriculum emphasized recognizing competence in unexpected forms and maintaining professional courtesy, regardless of personal judgments about individual personnel. The training sessions became forums for broader discussions about respect, military values, and the dangerous tendency to make assumptions about others based on limited information. Williams used the checkpoint incident as a case study without revealing classified details, focusing on the principles involved rather than specific individuals or circumstances. Specialist Brooks attended every training session with intense focus, recognizing that his minimal involvement in the incident had been a learning opportunity that could influence his entire military career. His grandfather's stories about Vietnam had provided some context for understanding combat injuries, but the training programs expanded his awareness of the complex legal and ethical issues surrounding personnel with classified backgrounds. The educational impact extended beyond immediate participants to encompass the entire base population through informal networks and professional development programs that emphasize the importance of treating all personnel with appropriate dignity and respect. The culture shift was subtle but measurable, reflected in daily interactions and operational procedures throughout the installation. Private Rodriguez was selected for advanced training in security procedures and personnel interaction protocols. Her supervisors, recognizing that the checkpoint incident had demonstrated both the need for better education and her potential for professional growth. The specialized training would prepare her for increased responsibilities, while ensuring she understood the complex legal framework governing military security operations. General Chun's inspection team spent 3 days evaluating every aspect of Camp Riverside's operations, from equipment maintenance and training programs to personnel management and security procedures. Their assessment would determine the installation's official rating and influence future resource allocation, mission assignments, and leadership evaluations. What the inspectors discovered was a command that demonstrated exceptional professional competence across all evaluated areas. The security procedures were thorough without being adversarial. The personnel interactions reflected genuine mutual respect, and the training programs addressed both technical requirements and underlying cultural values that supported mission accomplishment. The checkpoint incident had created an environment where personnel were more conscious of their professional behavior and more committed to maintaining the highest standards of military courtesy in all situations. The enhanced awareness translated into improved performance across multiple operational areas that impressed the inspection team and reflected positively on Harrison's leadership. Captain Mitchell continued her assigned duties throughout the inspection period, providing technical expertise and analytical support that contributed to the base's exceptional evaluation rating. Her professional competence was noted by several inspection team members who recognized the quality of her work without understanding the classified aspects of her background and service record. The intelligence summaries she prepared during the inspection period demonstrated strategic thinking and operational awareness that exceeded the expectations for personnel at her current assignment level. Her recommendations influenced planning decisions and resource allocation in ways that would improve base operations and mission effectiveness for months to come. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison received notification that his command had achieved the highest possible rating from the inspection team, with specific commendations for professional competence, personnel management, and security procedures. The evaluation report highlighted the exceptional quality of interactions between military personnel and the professional courtesy demonstrated throughout all levels of the organization. The success of the inspection validated Harrison's leadership approach while confirming that the crisis management following the checkpoint incident had been handled appropriately. His decision to implement immediate corrective training and cultural changes had transformed a potential disaster into an opportunity for organizational improvement that benefited everyone involved. General Chun's final briefing to Harrison and his senior staff emphasized the impressive level of professionalism and mutual respect she had observed throughout her evaluation period. The base culture reflected values and standards that exceeded regulatory requirements and demonstrated genuine commitment to maintaining the highest military traditions in all circumstances. Colonel Harrison, your personnel demonstrate exceptional professional competence and military courtesy, General Chun stated during the formal closeout briefing. The level of respect and dignity displayed in all interactions reflects outstanding leadership and organizational culture that serves as a model for other installations. The commendation was particularly meaningful given the crisis that had occurred just hours before the inspection team's arrival. Harrison recognized that the quick implementation of corrective measures and cultural changes had not only prevented negative consequences, but had actually enhanced the base's reputation and operational effectiveness. Staff Sergeant Davis completed her disciplinary assignments and mandatory training programs over the following months, emerging from the experience as a fundamentally different kind of leader. The harsh lessons learned from her encounter with Captain Mitchell influenced her approach to personnel management and security procedures for the remainder of her military career. Her specialized training on classified personnel and security procedures had provided education that few NCOs received, making her uniquely qualified to train other personnel and prevent similar incidents at future assignments. The knowledge gained through her mistake became valuable expertise that benefited the broader military community. The checkpoint where the incident occurred was eventually designated as a model security station, used for training purposes and as an example of proper procedures for installations throughout the region. New personnel assigned to security duties received specific instruction on professional courtesy, legal limitations on search procedures, and the importance of maintaining dignity in all interactions. Master Sergeant Williams incorporated lessons from the incident into professional development curricula that were adopted by other installations, spreading the cultural improvements beyond Camp Riverside to influence military personnel management throughout the region. The training programs became standard components of NCO education and leadership development courses. Captain Mitchell received new assignment orders several months later, transferring to another classified position where her expertise would contribute to operations that would never receive public recognition or official acknowledgement. Her departure from Camp Riverside was quiet and professional, reflecting the low-profile approach that characterized personnel whose service records remained classified. The base she left behind was fundamentally different from the one where she had been publicly humiliated by personnel who made incorrect assumptions about her background and service. The cultural transformation had created an environment where respect was the default assumption rather than something that had to be earned through displays of authority or credentials. The secure satellite communication from the Jordan staging area reached Pentagon briefing rooms within minutes of mission completion, carrying confirmation that would fundamentally alter American military training doctrine and personnel selection procedures. General Morrison received the initial report while chairing a strategic planning session focused on special operations capabilities, and the information he heard challenged every assumption about conventional military training effectiveness. Sir. Target eliminated with single shot at confirmed range of 1,523 yards under adverse environmental conditions. Captain Jensen reported through encrypted channels that ensured operational security while documenting unprecedented tactical achievement. Civilian Consultant Crawford achieved precision shooting performance that exceeds all documented military records under similar operational parameters. Morrison requested immediate verification through independent sources before accepting claims that challenged fundamental understanding of human capability and equipment limitations. The ballistic analysis, environmental data, and tactical documentation provided confirmation that Sarah Crawford had accomplished something that military science considered theoretically impossible under real-world combat conditions. The classified debriefing that followed Sarah's return to American soil involved testimony from multiple witnesses whose professional credibility could not be questioned. Captain Jensen, Staff Sergeant Martinez, and Corporal Williams provided detailed accounts of Sarah's preparation methodology, technical analysis, and shooting execution that validated claims about performance exceeding established military standards. Miss Crawford demonstrated understanding of ballistic principles that surpassed training curricula used in our most advanced marksmanship programs. Martinez testified during classified hearings that would influence military training policy for decades. Her ability to calculate environmental compensation factors and execute precision shooting under extreme conditions suggests capabilities that conventional military instruction has never developed. Secretary of Defense Patricia Hawkins reviewed classified mission reports while consulting with military leaders whose expertise encompassed special operations, advanced training programs, and personnel development policies. The documentation she examined indicated that a civilian consultant with no official military status had achieved tactical success that trained special operations personnel had been unable to accomplish through conventional methods. How did our selection and training systems fail to identify capabilities of this magnitude? Hawkins asked during strategic planning sessions that addressed fundamental questions about military human resource development. What modifications to our personnel evaluation procedures would prevent similar oversights in future candidate assessments? The investigation that followed Sarah's mission success involved a comprehensive review of military training methodologies, candidate evaluation criteria, and institutional assumptions about identifying exceptional human potential. Teams of specialists analyzed existing systems, while developing recommendations for procedural changes that would ensure America's military establishment never again overlooked individuals whose capabilities could provide strategic competitive advantages. Colonel Hayes found herself testifying before senior military leadership about circumstances that had led to Sarah Crawford's initial rejection and subsequent emergency deployment. Her explanations revealed systemic weaknesses in evaluation procedures that emphasized conventional qualifications, while failing to recognize exceptional ability that manifested through unconventional backgrounds and training experiences. Institutional changes that emerged from this investigation revolutionized American military approaches to talent identification and development. New evaluation protocols incorporated assessment methodologies that recognized diverse training backgrounds, while identifying natural aptitudes that conventional testing procedures had systematically overlooked. Within 6 months of Sarah's mission success, the Army Marksmanship Unit implemented completely redesigned admission procedures that evaluated candidates through practical demonstrations rather than bureaucratic documentation. Physical specifications became secondary considerations compared to demonstrated capability and psychological resilience under pressure. Sarah received formal invitations from every elite military unit operating within the American Special Operations Command structure: Delta Force, Navy SEALs, Marine Force Reconnaissance, Army Rangers, organizations that had never before recruited civilian personnel offered positions that included immediate commissioning at ranks reflecting her proven capabilities and strategic value. Miss Crawford, your demonstrated abilities represent exactly the kind of exceptional talent our most demanding missions require. The recruitment offers consistently emphasized. We would be honored to provide you with opportunities that match your capabilities while serving America's most critical national security objectives. Sarah declined these prestigious opportunities, choosing instead to return to Montana, where she could serve American military interests through training and development rather than individual operational contributions. Her decision surprised military leaders who expected someone with her demonstrated capabilities to seek advancement through traditional career pathways. The specialized marksmanship school that Sarah established on her grandfather's ranch became a destination for military personnel, law enforcement officers, and civilian competitive shooters seeking instruction that was unavailable through conventional training institutions. Her teaching methodology emphasized understanding environmental factors, developing mathematical calculation abilities, and building psychological resilience under high-stress conditions. Precision shooting represents the intersection of physics, psychology, and practical application. Sarah would explain to students who traveled from across America to receive instruction that integrated technical proficiency with tactical applications. Success requires understanding ballistic principles, managing human factors, and making ethical decisions about when deadly force serves legitimate purposes. Her students included military officers whose conventional training had provided technical competence but lacked depth of understanding that enabled exceptional performance under challenging conditions. Law enforcement specialists whose duties required precision shooting capability that exceeded standard police training curricula. Competitive shooters whose aspirations demanded knowledge that civilian instruction programs rarely provided. Scholarship program Sarah established provided training opportunities for economically disadvantaged students whose financial circumstances prevented access to advanced marksmanship instruction. Her partnerships with military recruitment programs created pathways for individuals whose backgrounds differed from conventional military profiles, but whose potential suggested significant contributions to national defense capabilities. International Military delegations began requesting training exchanges that would expose their personnel to Sarah's methodologies while providing her with opportunities to understand global approaches to marksmanship instruction and tactical training. These programs created informal diplomatic relationships that enhanced America's strategic influence through educational cooperation rather than traditional military partnerships. The documentary film that chronicled Sarah's journey from application rejection to strategic mission success became required viewing for military leadership development programs, serving as a case study in recognizing exceptional potential and adapting institutional systems to accommodate diverse pathways to excellence. Sarah's story influenced recruitment advertising that emphasized capability over appearance, potential over conventional credentials, and character over conformity to traditional military profiles. Young people whose backgrounds differed from historical military patterns began considering service opportunities that previous recruitment efforts had never effectively communicated. 10 years after her initial application rejection, Sarah received correspondence from the current commander of the Army Marksmanship Unit, requesting her assistance in developing evaluation protocols that would ensure future Sarah Crawfords would be identified and developed rather than overlooked by institutional systems designed for conventional talent recognition. Sarah's response demonstrated the humility and service orientation that had characterized her approach throughout her remarkable career. She agreed to provide consulting assistance while maintaining her primary focus on individual instruction and capability development at her Montana facility. The legacy Sarah Crawford created extended far beyond her record-breaking shot in Jordan or her subsequent contributions to military training reform. Her influence resided in demonstrating that excellence emerges through diverse pathways, that institutional systems must remain flexible enough to recognize exceptional potential in unexpected forms, and that America's security depends on developing human capabilities rather than simply identifying them. Today, Sarah continues teaching at her grandfather's ranch, where students learn not just technical marksmanship skills, but the broader lessons about perseverance, adaptation, and service that transform individual capability into collective strength. Her classroom walls display photographs of graduates who serve in military units, law enforcement agencies, and civilian professions where precision, dedication, and ethical decision-making contribute to communities and national security. The rejection letter that arrived on that Tuesday morning in March had been framed and hung in Sarah's office, not as a reminder of institutional failure, but as evidence that setbacks can become foundations for achievements that exceed original aspirations. Below the letter, Sarah had written words that summarize her philosophy and inspire everyone who reads them. Excellence isn't about meeting other people's expectations. It's about exceeding your own potential in service of purposes larger than personal recognition. Sarah Elizabeth Crawford proved that America's greatest assets are often found in places where conventional wisdom never thinks to look, developed by people who understand that true strength comes from preparation, character, and willingness to serve when service is needed most. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.